What if you could turn your passion for helping others into a career that changes lives, starting with your own? Join Empower's Certified Professional Empower Coach Academy, accredited by the ICF and powered by Oregon State University. Our next cohort begins February 28th. Visit yesempower.com to reserve your spot today.
In today's podcast, I have the privilege of interviewing Jasmyne Chandler. She's an International Coaching Federation certified, trauma-informed professional life coach for teens, young adults, and parents. She is the mom of 2 teens, and she has also spent the last 16 years working with teens as a high school teacher, GED instructor and advisor, and as a life coach, counsel facilitator, and mentor. Jasmyne holds a master's degree in education and has been trained as a counsel facilitator and wilderness rites of passage guide. She is the founder of Guided Passages, which offers youth programs, wilderness trips, and life coaching for teens, young adults, and parents of teens in Southern Oregon and beyond. Her focus as a coach is to assist teens, young adults, and their parents, and we use parents inclusively, so all of the adults working with teens who may need additional support, guidance, and mentorship in order to shift stuck energy, negative self-talk, and disconnection so that they can embrace and accept themselves for who they are, move towards positive change, and create the life and relationships that they truly desire. I'm so excited for you to listen in. As a parent of almost teens, I gained so much out of this conversation, including how much of the work is within me. It's exciting and can't wait to share it. Welcome to Rewired. I'm your host, Tiffany Grimes with Empower Coaching and Training. All right, Jasmyne, welcome. I am so happy to have you here. We have had a fun past of working together in many different ways. And I know we obviously have the opportunity to work together at Empower. And you have this whole other world that you are existing in where, as a certified professional coach and a voice for young people and for parents, you're really helping serve parents and teens in so many ways. And so I thought before we jump into the interview and some questions, if you just want to give, I've given kind of your bio, but if you want to give your version of how you introduce yourself and just a little overview of how you are touching the lives of young people and of the people who raise them.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for having me here. It's such an honor to be on your podcast because, I just love you and all the work that you do. And, the work that I do today as a coach, I can trace it right back to you and your work. I mean, that's where my work started, was a coaching session with you. And so just want to bring it back to the lineage of why I'm here right now. I mean, there's a lot of things that led me to that point prior to that, but that moment of meeting you and receiving coaching and learning about the power of coaching really opened my eyes to a whole new possibility of what I could do with my career and with youth. Because prior to that, I was an educator, and I was an educator for 13 years in high schools and in community college. And I loved working with youth in those ways and being in the classroom, but I couldn't really make the type of impact that I wanted to make. I come from a rites of passage background. I come from, sitting in council and really having these vulnerable, heartfelt moments. And you can't really do that to the depth that I wanted in a classroom setting.
Yeah.
But I already had a master's degree in education. I didn't want to go back for more degrees or things like that. And so when I learned about coaching, I realized, oh my God, this is a pathway to where I can be in relationship with teens in a different way and really serve them in a more heartfelt, soulful way, I guess.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what, brought me to this moment of, now having formed my youth organization, Guided Passages, 4 years ago. And, running wilderness rites of passage trips, coaching teens, running teen circles and things like that, all kind of congealed when the coaching piece fell into place. So.
Oh, I love that. I have this moment in my brain. You and I were co-facilitating a workshop with educators, and I had 2 days of slides and, handouts and all of these things prepared. And you came in and you sat the whole group in a circle. And within moments, like everybody's hearts were just out, and there were some tears, there were these insights, there were ahas. And so it just makes me think about the power of the work that you're doing, and in a world that desperately needs it, especially when we look at young people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So thank you. Thank you for the work and the gift that you're doing. Well, let's learn a little bit more about it. So, from your perspective as a coach, you're a certified professional coach and you're working with tweens, teens, and their parents. What are some of the biggest misunderstandings parents have about the teen brain, which I'm sure are plentiful? And how does neuroscience help us build empathy for what's really happening during adolescence? I remember reading something one time that was saying the adolescent brain is not an unbaked version of an adult brain, right? It's not that it needs to just stay in the oven a little bit longer. It's that it's perfectly primed for what its role is, for what it has to do. And I love that. It was a moment for me. So tell us about it.
Yeah, I love that because I think that's so true. Like it's actually prime time. There's so much possibility and potential with this stage of development in the brain. And so, yeah, I think that is one of the biggest misunderstandings that there's something wrong with their brain when actually it's working perfectly and as designed. But one of the things that I see is that parents are often thinking their teen is being difficult on purpose and then labeling them instead of labeling their behaviors. So they might think like, my teen is lazy, my teen's defiant, they don't listen. But if we look at the neuroscience, what we know is that during adolescence, there is this massive remodeling project happening in their brain. So the limbic system, which is the emotional reward seeking part of the brain, is in the driver's seat. And then their prefrontal cortex, that's the part that handles impulse control, long term planning, and reasoning, it's still under construction until about the mid 20s. So when parents know this, it really builds empathy. It shifts the lens from my kid is being a problem to my kid is going through a normal stage of brain development. And that perspective can be the difference between reacting with anger or responding with compassion in those moments. So it's not that there's something wrong with their teens, it's just that their brain is still growing and they're still learning. And so that
Yeah.
can really shift a lot in the way we view them when we know that.
Yeah, really. I mean, profoundly, I think, when we understand that impulse control area, that decision making, understanding the outcome of our decisions isn't fully formed, we can stop asking things like, what were you thinking? Right? Because they very well may not have been. They may have been in a very, reward seeking, non thinking region of their brain that is, yeah, wired to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, even, I caught myself, years ago saying the statement like, what's wrong with you? Right? What's wrong
Hmm.
with you? Like,
Yeah.
the which follows along with why would you do that? But yeah, it's just nothing's wrong. We're just like figuring it out here, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, and then there's a few more. So another big myth is that teens are really just reckless because they want to be rebellious or something like along those lines. But neuroscience tells us that dopamine, which is the brain chemical tied to reward, is firing at a lot higher levels in adolescence. And so risk feels more rewarding for teens than they do for adults. And because their prefrontal cortex is still developing, they don't have as much capacity to think about long-term consequences. So basically, the gas pedal, their limbic system is in charge, and then their brakes, which is the prefrontal cortex, are not really firing yet. And
Yes.
so the risk taking that they do is actually it's an adaptive practice. So it's how they practice independence and learn what they're capable of. And it's just part of the learning and growing process.
Yeah. Wow. That's interesting. And maybe we'll get down to this later, but it makes me think of, okay, I can build empathy and also that behavior has to stop, right? Or like, how do I parent in a way? Because just because I understand doesn't mean everything's allowable. So how do I then have those conversations of maybe if I'm understanding, okay, this is the part of the brain you're in, this is the development phase you're in, I can use my language not to label you, but label the behavior. And then maybe we talk about appropriate time or ways that we can add some safety levers to this. Or I imagine that that's some of the work that follows the aha of parents understanding, okay, this is actually a wiring system. Now what do I do with it?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I think that's so true. And I think a lot of that is, the conversations that we have with our teens before they're in those situations where those risks are going to be right in front of them.
Yes.
So before the peer pressure of like, yes, let's all jump off this bridge into the lake,
Yeah.
before, the peer pressure of let's go to this party and then drive home after, like those conversations happen when their brain is fully integrated in a calm moment and not when it's this high pressure, high stakes moment when they feel all that pressure from the social connection that their brain is also, craving and needing at that stage. And all of the other things, the reward center, firing so high, like they can't
Yeah.
think it through clearly in that moment. So, what's important to them? How do they want to move through the world? What do they value? And
Yes.
having those conversations in advance so that they're prepared. Like, what would happen if your friends ask you to do this? What would you want to do? How would you want to show up in that moment?
Yeah. I'm loving that because I think it shifts some of the responsibility onto me as a parent. I'm talking as a parent of almost 12 and 13-year-old. So I'm, right here along with every listener, but thinking about it shifts responsibility to me. So I'm not just waiting and watching, but rather I'm engaging regularly in some conversations. Yeah.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah.
So we know by what you just told us, the adolescent brain is still wiring that prefrontal cortex, which you had mentioned is decision making and emotional regulation and impulse control. How can parents use this knowledge to respond with compassion rather than frustration? So we've already laid a little bit of this. I'm doing it in advance, but if it does happen, how am I responding with more compassion, with frustration, Jasmine? Help us become more compassionate parents
Yeah.
after the fact.
Well, a lot of it's, comes with our expectations to begin with, right? If we're expecting adult level decision making from our teens, we're setting ourselves up for disappointment. I mean, that's just reality. So instead, we actually have to expect growth moments. And so then we're prepared when they happen. So when a teen makes a choice that seems impulsive, whether it's blowing off homework or snapping back at you, it's not necessarily defiance. It's that their brain is practicing regulation skills that they don't fully have yet. And so compassion really starts with remembering, all right, they're still wiring. And then we can coach instead of criticize. So, for example, I could say something like, I see you're overwhelmed right now. Let's take a break and come back to this.
Mhm.
And that kind of response doesn't mean there aren't consequences, but it really sends the message to them that I understand you and I'm here to help you build the skill, not to shame you for not having it yet.
Yeah.
So, just yeah, again, if we can let go of some of those expectations of them and then understand that when those behaviors present, okay, this is a growth moment. And how I respond in that moment is going to really shape the outcome of the interaction and how they move forward with, how they feel about themselves. And then the next time those situations come up,
Yeah.
we can really, bring it back to ourselves and how we're showing up to in that moment.
Yeah. Yeah. That idea of just saying again, I'm internalizing all of this right now. I'm expecting my almost 12-year-old to make decisions with an adult brain. That's what I'm frustrated about is that you didn't know any better or you didn't act any better or you didn't do if I can change that, my own expectation immediately for me, you just heard my breath, like immediately it just loosens up the moment, of course this was the decision that, my child made. Yeah. So
Mhm.
good. Such great support for parents. I did want to mention, I meant to mention this at the beginning. I'm going to keep using the word parents. I know you use the word parents. I want to just make sure I'm saying to the listeners, this is an inclusive term. So this might mean adult caretakers. This might mean aunties who are raising their nieces and nephews, or, whatever situation is at hand, whether it's a mentor or a teacher. I think all of these apply to all of us who are in the lives of young people. So we're going to keep using the word parents to keep it simple, but it's really inclusive.
Yeah. 100%.
So when you're coaching parents, what are some rewiring tools that you give them to shift from a problem-focused mindset? You've given a few examples already. Maybe one is like, you never listen, to a solution-focused one that builds connection and trust.
Okay. Yeah. Great question. So I think the first and most important tool is really shifting our focus. So as we know, our brain has a negativity bias. And so we are wired to notice what's wrong more than what's right. And so when parents only focus on the problems and the misbehaviors or the things that drive them crazy, that becomes the whole story that they tell themselves. And it's really about changing the lens through which we're viewing our teens. So I will ask parents sometimes, like, what's one small moment this week where your teen did listen or did show responsibility? What are things they're doing well right now? What are the things you love about them and that you're really proud of them for? So when we shift our focus to their strengths and what's going right, it retrains our brain to notice possibility and not just problems. And the beautiful thing about this practice is that when we shift where we're placing our focus, it actually changes our energy towards them, which in turn changes the way they see themselves. So when we see them as a problem, it comes through in all of our interactions with them. And that's how they start to see themselves. So if we want positive behaviors, we highlight positive behaviors. And, as I love Tony Robbins' quote that, where your focus goes, energy flows. So the idea that what we focus on is going to grow. And so if we're focusing on the things they're doing right and their strengths and all the things we love about them, they see that more in themselves. They start to live more into those things. We see it more, so our relationship strengthens. And it's just basically a win-win and such an important and powerful practice.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, I hear this theme of work I can be doing as a parent. This is work I can be doing as a parent rather than waiting and watching and judging, which is how I feel like, we kind of get into those places sometimes. And that I'm there to catch you when you did it wrong, but rather I'm there to catch you doing it well and right and commenting on that. And then it trains our brain to see more of those things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, really good.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I'll just say, that's where the shift happened for me in relationship to my own teenagers. When I started coaching with you, I was really like, how do I change my teen's behavior? Like he's having problematic behavior. She's doing this. Like, how do I change them? And, we really dove into like, how do I change myself?
Yeah.
And when I worked on changing myself and healing myself and working through, these generational patterns that I'd been carrying and shifting just those little things like how I'm looking at them and starting to notice the good and all the things I love, like everything changed. It wasn't just like how I saw them, but it was our relationship and it was also their behaviors.
Yeah.
Like the whole dynamic in the home shifts just by the work we do on ourselves.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my gosh. Yeah. I mean, so much shifts, right? Because then you're not full of stress hormones all the time and that, like really so much shifts. Mm-hmm. Amazing. All right. So I'm going to take us on a quick break. I think now's a great time. So stick with us. I want to come back and talk about some more languaging that parents can use because I know that that's such a powerful tool. So we'll be right back.
We'll be back after a quick break.
Ready to make a real difference? Become a certified professional coach with Empower Coaching and Training. Our next CPEC cohort, accredited by the International Coaching Federation and offered in partnership with Oregon State University, starts February 28th. Spots are limited. Learn more at yesempower.com.
All right, Jasmine, this is so good. We know, and you're already starting to paint that picture and hold, I'm going to say hold parents accountable in our part, in our role that we can play in. And so part of this is about languaging. So what are some coaching style questions that parents can borrow to invite curiosity and dialogue with their teens instead of shutting down conversations?
That's such a good one. I think language is so important.
Yeah.
So, one way we can start is just instead of starting with statements like "you should" or "why didn't you," which often is going to put them on the defensive, we can borrow open-ended coaching questions. So things like, "What feels most important to you about this right now?" Or, "If you could make one small change that would make tomorrow easier, what would it be?" Or, "How can I best support you right now without taking over?" So just all these questions that are going to invite them to say more,
Yeah.
right? Instead of invite defensiveness or shutdown. So these are questions that show respect and trust in your teen's perspective and in their own ability to find their own solutions. And so they invite dialogue instead of shutting down conversation. And it really communicates, I value your voice and I believe in your ability to figure this out.
Yeah.
And also, I want to say, because I think this is really important, is that not every moment needs to be a coaching moment with our teenagers. And so it's just as important to simply hold space for whatever they're experiencing without needing to jump in to try to help them reframe it or move to next steps. Because mostly our teenagers just want to be seen, heard, and validated. And when we stop ourselves from constantly jumping in to help them move towards solution, we show them that it's actually okay to just feel their really big feelings and express what's going on for them without needing to fix it. And that creates a sense of safety for them and is going to encourage them to keep coming to us with the hard things. Because if they know, oh, mom's always going to just try to coach me if I tell her this thing, they won't always keep coming. It's okay to, have these little coaching moments, peppered in. But if it's every single time, then it will create distance, I believe. And so a few of my go-to statements with my own teens are things like, wow, that sounds really hard. Or I'm sorry that happened. That probably didn't feel good. Or that makes a lot of sense. Or just I hear you. Or thank you for sharing that with me. So we don't always have to like move towards solution. It can just be like, oh, I'm holding space for you in this moment.
Yeah. How would you know to move from holding space to maybe asking a few of those coaching questions?
I would say, if this is an ongoing thing that keeps repeating over and over, this is something that's like, creating a lot of anxiety for them. It's, something that they keep talking about. So it's a problem that just keeps spinning
Yeah.
over and over and over, day after day. Then we don't want to just keep, asking them more questions about it and keeping them stuck there. We want to
Yeah.
help them find a way or see that there is a way forward, like what's the next step? What's the next best step that we could have? Just any little micro thing. What's already going well in the situation, just helping them to reframe a tiny bit. But yeah, just not every moment, but there are moments when, yeah, it's so helpful because we don't want to just keep them stuck in those problem-focused thinking situations where they're up at night with anxiety and all the things. Like, how can they reframe it in those moments as
Yeah.
well?
Yeah. Yeah. So maybe the first place we meet the challenge is just by holding space. And then I'm imagining that even in that, just holding the space, sometimes they may open a little bit more. They may guide the discussion a little bit deeper because we're not poking and prodding and making it happen. Or it might be that that's enough in that moment. They felt seen and they felt heard and they felt held. And then if there's a continued pattern, that's really a sign for us to maybe go to that next level, ask some of those questions that you're mentioning, which I love the first one you asked. I don't know if you can remember it, but it was something like, what's important to you about this? Do you remember the first question you asked? Coaching question a parent could ask?
What feels most important to you about this right now?
Yeah, God, I love that question. I just make that decision for my kids. I just decide what's important. Like, I can't believe that kid did that to you and blah, 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 blah. it's almost like I take over, I think, as I'm saying that out loud. And so I love that. Just what's important to you about this? Because it's probably much more entangled and enmeshed than, my parent brain understands. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And then one more thing too is that, we can always just ask them, do you just want to vent right now, or do you want some more support with moving this forward?
Yeah.
Like give them a choice, because, oftentimes
So
they
good.
don't want it. So we could just ask,
Yeah.
oh, they don't want to be coached right now. So
Yeah. I love that. We don't need a magic 8 ball or, guess throw a dart in the dark and see if we can hit the target. Just ask. Love that. Yeah.
yeah.
Really good. Well, I want to move us a little bit into the topic of boundaries, because I know that's a big one. We as parents want to set them, and generally speaking, teens want to push them. Although now I'm questioning even how I said that based on how we opened up this conversation. Their brain is wired to push them, maybe is what I'll say. So, from both a neuroscience and a coaching lens, how can families establish boundaries that are firm and still foster that independence?
Okay. Yeah. Good one. Yeah. Boundaries are such a big part of our parenting journey. Oh my goodness. So one way that we can think about boundaries is that they are actually something that help teens to feel safe, even though they say they don't want them, right? And they say they want all the freedoms in the world, they actually help them feel safe. And so we can really think of them like guardrails on a winding road. And so without them, it's terrifying. There's all these like sheer drop offs, and all of that. And so the guardrails are actually really nice. But the trick is setting boundaries that are firm and flexible. So we can't be so rigid with our boundaries that there's no room for conversation or room for, I would even say, respect, like giving our kids the respect to have a voice and a choice in the things that impact their lives. If we're always just laying down the laws for our kids, it's like they're going to push back. They're going to rebel. They don't feel seen, they don't feel heard, right? And so we want to have those boundaries there, but can we be a little bit flexible? Can we have a boundary that gets both of our needs met? Like, I have a need to know that you're safe, right? So it's not okay with me for you to come home at 2 a.m. from the party. And I know you have a need to hang out with your friends and be there as long as you can. So where can we meet in the middle so that we can both feel good about this? So I think that's a big piece. And again, that's big part of connection, building connection with our teens. It's like if we're just the boundary police, if we're always, laying down boundaries, reinforcing boundaries, it's like we lose out on connection, and they lose out on the feeling of their own capacity to make choices. We're trying to scaffold for them into adulthood. Like, you are a young adult in training here. And so like allowing them to have some choice in decision making, building that while they still have the safety net of us there is really huge.
Yeah.
So that's one thing I would say.
Oh gosh, that makes me think of so many things. I grew up in a very boundaried, my dad specifically laid down the law, and that was what what we must do. And I left the house just before turning 18, graduated from high school, went off to college, 9 hours away, and was living in the dorms. And I was a mess. I mean, I did everything that I possibly could because I was never allowed to do it growing up. I mean, I passed. I don't know how. I don't really remember much from that year. Like I was out of control. And it was because I mean, I don't know why it was. There are a million reasons, but one of them I often think about, and my partner talk a lot about this as we raise our own children, is I want some of those, like, oh, hell yeah, I'm going to try that because I couldn't do it at home. And if one's great, nine's better, like I want some of those things to not feel as enticing as my kids leave the house. I want them to have had some experiences under their belt or some conversations or, just a safe space to ask questions about it. We also didn't talk about that kind of stuff in my house. You just didn't do it. You didn't ask about it and you didn't do it, whether it was whatever, relationships, drinking, staying out late, whatever it was. And so I just overdid it all when I left the house. And so that is one for me. It's like deep brain wiring for me to lay down the law with my kids. And then I remember all the ways, that I would sneak into things when I was in, early high school. I wasn't allowed to wear these like little mini skirts that I wanted to wear. And so I would leave the house fully, no makeup, fully dressed, a big old skirt on. And the second my parents would leave, I'd take them all off and I'd put on my makeup, I think about the boundaries like, okay, this is one that I have to keep coming back to soften and negotiate and to help them grow into their age. That's not like they're a child and then an adult. There's this really beautiful tween and teen phase. And like you're saying, learning how there's got to be some room in there for them to negotiate and take some risks and for parents to let go a little and still keep things safe and, all of those things. And probably a little uncomfortable on both sides, I would guess, right? Because if I lay down the law for my kids, I feel really comfortable and they're very uncomfortable. And if they're doing whatever they want, they're probably comfortable and I'm highly uncomfortable. So if we're negotiating, we're both a little uncomfortable, which is great. That means we're both probably growing and open and talking and doing the hard work. So, yeah.
Yeah.
How
they're so much more likely to follow through on a boundary if they're part of the process. Like what you said, that rebellion against a hard boundary, they're going to go out and they're going to do the thing, right?
I'm going to find a way. Yeah.
Yeah. But if they're in the process, it's like, okay, yeah, they might actually do what
Yeah. So good. Oh my gosh, that's great. Good stuff. Good stuff, Jasmine. All right. Adolescence, it's a messy time, I think. It's a time of identity formation, which may change a lot. We try on new things. We try on new ways of being. I just shared a few of my own. How do you help teens and their parents? We've been talking a lot about their parents, but I know you work directly with teens as well. So how do you help teens reframe mistakes or setbacks as opportunity for growth and resilience rather than just shame and blame and failure? And how do you do that work with teens?
Yeah. Yeah. So good because, teens tend to beat themselves up so much about mistakes and let mistakes stop them in their tracks. They can often be the reason that they quit, and all of those types of things. So the way I talk about mistakes with teens and parents is that mistakes and setbacks are just a part of adolescence and a part of being human because no one makes it through their life without lots of them. They're not proof that something is wrong. They're actually the things that help all of us grow into our resilience and into our full capabilities. And really, mistakes and failure are what help us create resilience and success. They're almost like the prerequisite for growth. And so when a teen messes up or quote unquote fails, our reaction as parents is really important. So if our response is to shame, like, I can't believe you did that, their brain is going to go into survival mode and they're not going to learn from that experience.
Yeah.
But if our response is, okay, what can we take from this? Right? Right. That happened, right? Mistakes happen. What can we take from this for next time? Then their brain is going to stay open to learning and changing. And so helping teens cultivate a growth mindset is so huge because one of the central components of a growth mindset is to use mistakes as feedback for improving next time and as a stepping stone for growth. Right. So
Yeah, absolutely. And so how do you help reframe that with teens when you're coaching them? Can you share any example? I mean, obviously keeping confidentiality, but what's that conversation actually sound like?
Okay, so let's see here. So maybe it's like someone that plays a sport. So I'll just use volleyball as an example. So say a teenager comes to me and they're a volleyball player and they're in this habit of every time they, miss their hit or they miss a pass or something like that, they immediately go into like the shame and blame. Like, I'm such an idiot. I'm so stupid. Why did I do that? And then when they do that, I talk to them about what happens in their brain is that they're now in that fight or flight, stress response where they don't have a fully integrated brain. And so when the next ball comes over, they're not going to be ready to, receive it or, react in the way that they need to get the pass that time.
Right.
So they're basically shutting down all the future success that they want. So if they can look at that moment like, okay, missed that one, and then reset, the way they talk about those challenges in that moment is going to create a completely different result for them. So if really their goal is like, hey, I want to be this, expert volleyball player, but they're beating themselves up and, basically stopping all their growth in its tracks, then they're not going to get to where they want to go. And
Yeah.
so they have to be able to reframe mistakes of like, okay, I missed that one. And now I'm going to watch the video. I'm going to watch and see what I did with my arm to see how I can shift it next time so that next time it goes down exactly where I wanted it to go, or I make that connection. And that's, I teach them like anyone that's, excelled in any area of their life, whether that's, in athletics or becoming a famous actor on Broadway or a neurosurgeon or whatever, they've only made it there through making lots and lots and lots of mistakes and then learning and taking the lessons from each of those mistakes in order to change and grow. And so just that's kind of how we shift into that growth mindset of like, oh yeah, this isn't a failure. This is feedback for my life. Like
Yeah.
I can use this. This is fuel. Like if I really want to get somewhere good, I actually want these mistakes to build from. And that's what's going to help me.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. And I think I'm feeling moved to say for parents who might be doing some of this coaching, or, maybe you're coaching them and I'm a parent watching from the stands, how is this impacting, that can take a while, that their ability or what they're presenting to us as the adults in their lives might be really different than some of the inner workings that are happening and how they're reframing some of that language and how they're processing that information. So being patient and consistent as a parent. Change is slow, right? Change is slow. Just because we've had one talk and we think it went well doesn't mean that tomorrow when they miss that ball, they're going to just go, what can I learn from that? Right? It's going to be a process, just like it is for all of us to really change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those neural pathways. Dang
I
it.
had this moment the other day with my daughter, again, 13. And when she was little, we used to do a lot of the Carol Dweck work on growth mindset. I had the journal and I'd made up all these songs, and I made up this song that was like, I can't do this yet. No, I can't do this yet. I had these little yes. Nothing. She did not like that. We didn't talk. She hated it. She did very little in the journal at 13. So almost, I would say 9 years later, just this week, she started using the word yet. And I was like, oh my God, it's been in there. It's been brewing. It's been finding a home, it's been finding a place to live. And it's the seed, whatever, didn't blossom yet. It took root. The seed of growth mindset took root. So being patient as parents.
Yeah, so good.
You do some really great work. So beyond just the individual coaching, you do some really great work with young people, both out in wilderness and also online. You do some rites of passage work. Can you share some of what that looks like and why it's so powerful for teens, especially this rites of passage work at this stage in their brain and in that identity development we talked about, and how parents can support that process?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. So yeah, rites of passage is my biggest passion. It's really what brought me here, way, way long ago. So gosh, it's been 27 years or so since I went out on my very first rites of passage when I was 19 years old. And that event changed the entire course of my life. And so I really saw firsthand the power of mentorship, the power of marking these big transitional moments in our life, the power of being witnessed, the power of being celebrated, the power of being seen. Just, what happens when young people have to push through a hard challenge and persevere through it. And then they tell their story about how they made it through this challenge and what that does inside, about their sense of self, their sense of capability, their sense of identity. So it's really, really, really powerful work. Rites of passage are something that have been happening for thousands of years across the globe. And ancient cultures practice this all the time. It's just like when you become an adult, you go through this rite of passage moment, right? You do this big, initiation moment, and then your community recognizes you and welcomes you in as this new role. So it's this defining moment for them that, okay, now I'm no longer a child. Now I am an adult, or now I'm no longer a child. Now I'm a teenager, whatever the moments are, but they get witnessed by that, and then something happens internally when we ritualize things like that in a ceremonial way. And so it's really, really powerful, and it helps teens so much with those big questions that are brewing right now of like, who am I?
Yeah.
What matters to me? Where do I belong? What am I capable of? All of those things. And, the way that I do it is I bring youth out into the backcountry. So we backpack into the backcountry. And so they are having this moment where they're separating from all of their comforts, from their parents, from their bedroom, from their cell phone, from their pillow, from their friends, and they're going out. So they're separating, which is a really hard thing to do. And then they're out in nature. They're just completely immersed in nature, which is one of, the most healing things for any of us, to be completely immersed in nature, because nature is, just that mirror of the perfection of, all of the life cycles and everything. And we're so disconnected from that in our everyday life. And teenagers in this day and age are very disconnected from nature, because, when we were young, we were out running around all over the place, out in the fields and doing whatever, just
Right.
running wild and free in nature. And that's not really happening so much today. So there's a big disconnect there. And so that nature connection piece, that connection with adult mentorship, that connection with themselves, like being able to be vulnerable in a space and share what's going on, in a group setting. There's just so many beautiful things that come from it. And the way that I have parents support in that process is, after I take youth out into the wilderness and they have this big experience where they actually have solo time and they answer big questions about themselves, make an identity statement like, I am this person who, that type of thing.
Wow.
They do all of that. And then when we come back, we gather all of the people. We gather the family members and the siblings and the guides and all the kids, and we sit in a circle. And each kid gets to go around and tell their story in front of their parents. And then their parents get to witness them, tell them how proud they are, how much they love them, what they see as their strengths. And there's just some serious power in that. And that is just not something that we see happening, in today's society. So
Oh, God, that brought tears to my eyes. It's so powerful to do that work as a teen, right?
mhm.
And I think about how, I'm 51, and I think I'm still new into that, Who am I, and how do I present to the world, and how do I claim who I am and live into that every day? And so to do that powerful work in the reflection of your own family, to come back, I'm different now, or I've brought something new about me to you to show to you. How powerful.
We'll be back after a quick break.
Ready to level up how you lead at work and at home? Empower Coaching and Training brings brain-based coaching, mindfulness tools, and real-world strategies you can share with those you serve and live with. Get started now. Visit us at yesempower.com.
How can that be done without a wilderness backpacking trip? Can it be done without a big ritualized event? I wonder. What are your thoughts on that?
I think there's lots of simple ways to incorporate rites of passage. It doesn't have to be a wilderness experience, even when our daughters start their periods for the first time, that's a moment, right? Or maybe they're turning 16, and you have a big party for them, but in that party, you have, all the people that came, stand in a circle for a minute and everyone, goes around and says one thing that they really appreciate about that person, or, just there's ways that we can still mark a moment and make it like meaningful. It's not just something that we bypass, and we do it in simple ways. Like we have like our birthday parties and our graduation ceremonies, which are kind of trying to get at that, but they could be a lot more potent.
Yes.
So there's ways that we can add elements in that make it a lot more meaningful. So simple things like that, just having everyone say something about the person or whatnot. But, and these are things that, we can do throughout our lives. Like there's so many moments in our life that we have transitional moments from one phase to the next, right? From being, a young adult into stepping into elderhood, or, to becoming a parent, or whatever it might be. There's all these moments. And when we find a way to mark them in some way, right? Like I am different now than I was before.
Yeah.
And this is what
Yeah.
I'm taking with me forward, and this is what I'm leaving behind.
Yeah.
And so we can be really intentional about it instead of just kind of going through the motions of our everyday life and not stopping to notice.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's that's big, beautiful work for everybody. I mean, that really, there's a lot I want to unpack there, but we'll keep moving. But wow, I think of so many ways that could be done for adults who didn't have that done in their, anyway, good work. There's some good work in there.
Mhm.
Okay. And then you do, I want to get to, I have a final question here where I want to get some tips that parents could use right away. But you also have some online stuff. We talked about wilderness trips. What are some of the online workshops or systems that you have in place for youth or for parents?
Yeah, so I do a couple different things. So most of my coaching happens virtually. So for teens and young adults age 12 to 24, I have two coaching programs. The one for the younger teens for 12 to 14 is called Ignite, and then I have one called Rise Up for 15 to 24-year-olds. And these are 12-week high-touch coaching programs where I meet individually with them one-on-one once per week for 12 weeks, and then they have an entire digital course that companions with it. So every week they're learning tools and strategies for shifting their mindset, their focus, for, finding what they're passionate about in their life, for stepping into their own authenticity, for learning how to process through emotions, for regulating their emotions, just all those things that we need to be successful in life, but that we're not taught in school, basically. And
Yeah.
so they learn these tools and then they come to coaching sessions and we incorporate them. Like, how can we apply these things? Like what's relevant this week for what your particular challenge is right now? Like what's the missing ingredient that you want to
Yeah.
incorporate, and really just helping them to find, that they have the answers inside of them,
Yeah.
that I'm just a guide as a coach. I don't have the answers. I'm just there to kind of highlight for them that they have all the capacity, all the potential, all the possibility in the world. It's all right there inside of them. And so it's just a matter of them being able to see it for themselves and accessing it. So
Yeah. That's great. And then you do individual coaching with parents as well.
yeah, for parents, I do individual coaching too. And I also have program for them as well. That one's called Rooted in Connection. And that's
Okay.
an 8-week online course. So they, again, meet with me individually for coaching sessions, but have a digital course to go along with it where they're learning all these tools around boundaries and conscious parenting and where they're placing their focus and just all of that stuff.
Amazing. Amazing. Jasmine is also all over TikTok. She's an inspiration to me over there and has a podcast called Parents and Teens Rising. So there's lots of places to connect with you. So as we start to round this out, let me ask you, for the parents who are listening who feel like they're maybe struggling, they heard something that you said and feel sparked by you, they want to show up more intentionally for their teens. What are the first few steps they could take? And how can working with a certified professional coach through Empower, or whether with you taking a digital program, how can that help them and their families thrive?
Well, I would say, the first thing is that we can take really small steps. It doesn't have to be overwhelming. So starting small, trying like just one new little tool, so if you heard a tool during this conversation, just try one. So maybe it's asking an open-ended question at dinner, or maybe it's just celebrating a small win that you noticed that your teen had for the day. Or one of the things that I always like to invite parents to do that are my coaching programs is just to like take out a piece of paper and brain dump all the things you love about your teenager, all the things you're proud of them for, just so that you can start to have that reframing process happening. And like that foundational piece of just shifting the way that we look at them, starts a cascade of positive things after it. Because once we have a different energy around our teen, we have so much more capacity for all of the growth that they're doing, all of the, mishaps that might happen or the pushback that we might get. We have a new capacity to hold all of that when we're also seeing the good and the beautiful and the things that we love about them. And
Yes.
so that's where I would probably start. And then if you do feel stuck, if you're like, I just can't really seem to make those changes on my own, that's where coaching is such a powerful support. And so at Empower, we work with both parents and teens to build skills of emotional regulation, communication, connection, confidence. So parents can really learn to show up with presence and consistency, and teens can learn to manage anxiety and discover motivation and step into their purpose. And so you don't have to do this alone. It's so much easier with a coach. I mean, that's what I learned for myself. Like, me working with you as my coach, like the amount of transformation that you can make in a short period of time when you work with a coach is really amazing. Basically, you compress time when you work with a coach. You can get all this stuff through reading books and, doing your internet searches and listening to podcasts, but it happens so much faster when you have support and you have someone to like give you the feedback and all of that, be honest with you. So
Yeah.
you don't do it alone.
Yeah, and there's a place, you're going to talk about this on Tuesday at 3 or whatever it is. Yeah.
Accountability.
So good. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the brain dump, love that idea. Just what all do you love? Because how much time do you spend talking about all the things that drive you crazy? So instead, like, what are all the things you love? Just write all those down and capture those. And maybe even just observe your state shift, as you do that work. I'm just curious about that. And then the other thing you said is, if you've heard one thing today that you like, or if you follow Jasmyne on TikTok, she gives out so many great little bits of information and tips on that. I hear one thing, I can just try it. I don't have to dive into the whole thing. I can just say, I love the idea of holding space. That's one of the things that I'm taking away from today that I want to start right away is I don't have to fix every situation. My child isn't coming to me for every situation to be fixed. So I can start with just holding space. And that's one that I'm going to start today for sure.
I love that.
All right. As we begin to close, any final things you want to put into this space, Jasmyne, before we go off and parent? You included.
Yes, I think the final thing I want to say is that our biggest tool in all this process of parenting teenagers and just parenting ourselves is self-compassion. Because it's so easy to look out on other people thinking that everyone's got it figured out or you're messing up or all the things. It's like we don't serve ourselves at all when we beat ourselves up. And so for wherever we're at today in this moment, just, holding that and giving ourselves grace for wherever we're at because, we're here in this moment for a lot of different reasons. And, as we learn more, we do better. And it's like right here, right now, I'm okay. I'm doing my best.
Yes.
And I can have compassion for that, for that older version of myself and for this version of myself that I am today too.
Yeah.
So that's what I would say.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. Well, thank you. We will list all sorts of connections in the show notes, including your TikTok, which I've mentioned a few times that I love, the link to your podcast. We will link to some of your virtual courses that are directly on your website. If you want to work individually with Jasmyne, you can connect with her through Empower. So we'll put that stuff in there as well. Jasmyne, we're so grateful for you. Thank you very much for the work that you do in the world, specifically with our amazing young people. We need you.
Thank you so much, Tiffany.
Thanks. Thanks for tuning in to Rewired, where neuroscience meets real life change. If you enjoyed today's conversation, I'd be so grateful if you take a moment to leave a 5-star review. Your feedback helps people discover the tools, insights, and inspirations they need to create lasting change. While you're leaving that 5-star review, please also subscribe and share an episode with a friend. Remember, the way you think shapes the way you live. Every intentional thought, every mindful choice rewires your brain and your life. So go live intentionally, live thoughtfully, and never underestimate the power of your own mind to transform your world. Until next time, this is Tiffany with Empower Coaching and Training. Stay curious, stay empowered, and keep rewiring for real change.
Every family has challenges, and every parent deserves support. At Empower Coaching and Training, youth and parenting coach Jasmyne Chandler helps parents and young people find clarity, connection, and practical tools that make a difference. Visit yesempower.com to connect with Jasmyne and explore our team of incredible coaches today.